My understanding is now that since the COVID-19 pandemic, and quite frankly, obviously with the shutdowns and the lockdowns, franchisees were just unable, obviously, as you would imagine, to meet their obligations. My understanding with what happened that it's actually moved to a concession model in which the government essentially pays all the costs for the private entities or companies that are operating the networks and the trains incur, plus I think it's a 2% maximum management fee. So it's moved to a concessionary model, and they've moved away from the franchising model. Is that
Yes.
correct?
It is, and when the Shapps-William plans were announced, Grant Shapps went on the media and he said it's ridiculous that in our signal control centres we have two sets of staff, one represented by the train operating companies, the other by Network Rail, which is government owned, to argue about who is responsible for what delays. Because under the contractual arrangements that the franchisees have, they are liable for delays they cause themselves. But a delay is extremely difficult to impute on a network, especially when you have these knock-on consequences that I was talking about earlier. So vast amounts of energy are spent, pure waste of resources, arguing about these issues. Now, Grant Shapps comes on the media and he says, we're going to sort this out. We're going to have it that the train operating companies just run the trains. And, Great British Railways will sell the tickets. Great British Railways will specify the timetable. Great British Railways will keep the ticket revenue. And the franchisees will become subcontractors and they'll just be paid a margin on the costs they incur. That will encourage them to do what they do best, which is hold down costs and leave us to plan an integrated national rail network. But since that time, it's become mired in political controversy within the governing party, so that nothing has happened to implement this agenda, and nobody knows at the moment what the agenda actually is, or even if the plan is still alive.
Is it obviously, as we're moving out of a post-pandemic environment and sort of economy, and we're starting to see some sort of more normalcy return to a lot of these industries, is this concessionary model, in your opinion, likely to be more successful or less successful than the franchising model?
It would, in principle, be more successful, yes. But what is really required, there has been a consultation about Great British Railways, and I'm one of the people who've been consulted about it. Now, my view as an economist is basically this, that there are a number of functions on a railway system that have to be performed, and they all have to be performed well for the system to work. So there has to be a ticketing system and a freight charging system to bring in revenue. There have to be people to operate the trains, to drive them, and to maintain security on them. There have to be people who finance the trains or finance the production of wagons. There has to be a track controller and signalling controller. So we can identify each of these functions, and then we can say, as Adam Smith would have said 250 years ago, should we specialise each of these functions with a particular group of people who really know their stuff on that subject? If so, how do we then coordinate the work of those specialists? Now, if government would take that view, they could discuss whether coordination was best effected by a centralised system of planning and the employment of all the managers within an overall overarching organisation, or whether they wanted to subcontract these different functions to different people. And if so, who would oversee the disputes that would arise between the different subcontractors incidentally in the course of the operation? But that conceptual framework is not in use. I have not seen any single instance of any person participating in the Great British Railways debate who has followed the sort of Adam Smith line of running a railway requires a combination of specialised functions, all of which must be performed to a high standard.
Mm.
What is the best system of coordination for delivering public benefit? Nobody is asking that question. In practice, what is happening is people are taking off-the-shelf historical methods. Some people favour a return to 1914. Some people favour a return to 1928. Some people want to go back to 1980. I mean, this is no way to discuss, the future of the railway system. What epoch should we go back to? What we need is analysis using modern economic thinking, modern cost accounting techniques, modern strategic management thinking. What's the best organisational structure, and how much do incentives need to be devolved to individual companies operating within this structure? No discussion of that issue at all.